we've got here is failure to communicate.
Except it was very clearly communicated to Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, and she signed it into law anyway. Today, we are talking about the growing revolt by rural sheriffs who are stating publicly that they will not enforce assault weapons gun ban, the one that was just signed into law by Grabby Abby Spanberger a few weeks back. And it's not just these sheriffs who are saying no to shredding the Second Amendment. Several Commonwealth attorneys have also said that they too will not enforce the unconstitutional new law that goes into effect on July 1st. We'll cover exactly what they're saying they're going to do and what they're not going to do, and you want to stay through the end where I answer the question, can they really do that? Hi, if you're new here, I am Terry Christoph. I am a fed-up Gen Xer and ticked-off Virginian who spent years working behind the scenes in conservative media and decided I needed to get behind this microphone so that you and I can talk about what's really going on. Welcome to Smart Girl Politics. As we covered in a previous episode, Governor Spanberger, and I saw her being called Abigail Spanberger on social media, which is perfect, signed into law a piece of legislation crafted by a state senator that we'll talk about in just a moment that bans assault weapons beginning in just a few short weeks. Let's remind ourselves what that covers.
Virginia Democrats passed SB 749, and according to this lawsuit, it creates one of the broadest so-called assault firearms bans in the nation. The law criminalizes the importation, sale, manufacture, purchase, transfer, and even public carry of massive categories of semi-automatic firearms and magazines beginning July 1st, 2026.
Okay, and a lot of people ask specifically what is banned because it's a loosey-goosey assault weapons ban, and he gets into it a little bit here.
Now listen carefully to how broad this thing is. According to the lawsuit, Virginia's definition of assault firearm includes semi-automatic rifles with detachable magazines and common features like adjustable stocks, pistol grips, threaded barrels, or forward grips. Semi-automatic pistols with threaded barrels, braces, barrel shrouds, or magazines outside of the grip. Semi-automatic shotguns with detachable magazines or pistol grips, shotguns with revolving cylinders, any firearm capable of accepting belt-fed ammunition, and even firearms modified to become one of these categories.
Quite an extensive list, no? And just a quick reminder that this piece of legislation was written by State Senator Saddam Aslan Salim, a Muslim immigrant from Bangladesh. He represents areas of Fairfax County, of course. And I think the context is important because he is an immigrant who's been here exactly 3 seconds and has come into Virginia to tell families who have been here for generations what they can and cannot do. Context is important. I also like to keep up with this good senator and see what he was up to over the holiday weekend. So while the rest of the country was celebrating Memorial Day, or most of us, not Democrats, they like to make it political, we were celebrating and remembering the men and women who died in service to our country so that we can be free. But not good Senator Saddam Aslan Salim. Instead of thanking the men and women and remembering them with great reverence and solemnity, he was out marching with gun grabbers. So that's your Democrat Party right there in a nutshell and one picture. Aren't they happy? Clueless to the core that they have the freedom to be blankety blanks because of the men and women who died for us. Just the context that I really think is important. With the clock counting down the days until this abominable piece of legislation goes into law, sheriffs around the Commonwealth are saying that they have no intention of trampling on the constitutional rights of law-abiding Virginians. This article from last week, Virginia sheriffs raised concerns over assault-style gun bans Spanberger signed into law. We know what the law is. I want to hear what some of these sheriffs are saying. Amherst County Sheriff Jimmy Ayers said, "The citizens of Amherst County have the right to bear arms as long as they're qualified individuals to do so." Campbell County Sheriff Whit Clark said, "I believe that this is an infringement on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding gun-owning citizens." Clark also called the law, quote, "nothing more than a gun grab." And how jealous am I that I don't live in rural Virginia right now? And it's not just the sheriffs who have turned on Spanberger and Virginia Democrats. It's also several Commonwealth attorneys who are letting it be known publicly that they too will not be enforcing unconstitutional laws like this one. This past weekend, Fox News interviewed Spotsylvania Commonwealth Attorney Ryan Mahaffey, who wrote to Spotsylvania Sheriff Roger Harris to let him know the new law is, quote, unconstitutional and cannot be lawfully enforced. Let's take a look. All right, the article says, Marine vet prosecutor refuses to cross constitutional line on Spanberger's assault weapon ban. This is Ryan Mahaffey, who Spotsylvania is lucky to have as a Commonwealth's attorney. He is taking a hard-line stance against what he believes is an unconstitutional new gun ban signed by Spanberger. Blah, 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 blah. With the bill set to take effect this July, ahead of America's 250th anniversary of independence, Mahaffey sent a letter to Spotsylvania Sheriff Roger Harris instructing him that the ban is unconstitutional and cannot be lawfully enforced. A statement released by Spanberger's, I don't really care what she says, it's just going to be complete garbage and word salad. Mahaffey said in an interview with Fox News Digital that the law is striking at the core of the militia system that existed in Virginia. Love this stuff. According to Mahaffey, the Second Amendment is not just an assurance of personal freedoms, but also a safeguard for a community's ability to defend itself through a well-regulated militia. This is Mahaffey speaking. Our founders were careful to make sure when they drafted our founding document that the ultimate right of the people was preserved to defend themselves and to defend their community. So the linchpin of the constitutional analysis is going to be, does this instrument have some reasonable relationship to the preservation or efficiency of a regulated militia? It gets even better. Mahaffey argues that in Virginia, and we don't hear this often in Northern Virginia, so it's a good reminder for us, historical tradition and case law precedent not only allow citizens to own firearms, but even require them to arm themselves with the weapons of a basic infantryman for common defense. In the Founding Fathers' time, Mahaffey said the standard issue was a musket and 20 rounds. Today, the basic infantry weapon in the U.S. military is the M4A1 carbine equipped with a 30-round magazine. Mahaffey laughs. The Second Amendment may not mean that you're allowed to have a nuclear weapon, but what it does allow you is to have basic infantry weapon. That sort of weapon is the core of what's protected. The Second Amendment, not necessarily a nuclear warhead, but a rifle that you could take out and form either a fire team or a company to defend yourself and defend your community. That's some good stuff. The Commonwealth's attorneys of Powhatan and Smith counties have also stated publicly that they cannot and will not enforce the gun grab. When the god-awful piece of legislation was making its way through the General Assembly, Sheriffs Eyre and Clark warned Virginia Democrats and Governor Spanberger that they were straying into extremely risky territory. Did they listen? They did not. Counties with these absolute rock stars for sheriffs and Commonwealth's attorneys, you don't know how lucky you are. I actually do have a conservative sheriff and Commonwealth's attorney here in Loudoun. We're hanging on by a thread here. I do not believe they've said publicly what they're going to do. It might be important to know a Commonwealth's attorney can decide which cases to prosecute. We've seen that with good old Steve Descano in Fairfax County, can decline charges, can prioritize certain crimes over others, can determine whether a prosecution is legally viable. And sheriffs have the operational discretion on how aggressively to enforce, whether to prioritize enforcement, and how to allocate deputies and resources. So there is actually a fair amount that they can do here. And we have a little bit of an idea of what might happen next with all of these rogue, I'm sure that's what it's going to be, right? These rogue it seems like there needs to be a bit of a coordination and some organizing. Well, it's like get our Barack Obamas on and do some community organizing here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And of course, there are several state and federal lawsuits that have already been filed and are going through the courts. The NRA, the Firearms Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America, Second Amendment Foundation, and the Virginia Citizens Defense League all have lawsuits. And of course, the Department of Justice has indicated that they too will see Spanberger in court. So we'll be following that one. Now it is your turn, friends. I want to know if your county's sheriff or Commonwealth's attorney has announced whether or not they'll be enforcing the new gun grab law. Drop me a comment down below in the comments section so I can keep up with what's happening in your part of the Commonwealth. I need you to be my eyes and ears because I want us to make sure that we are talking about what Virginians and everybody outside of Virginia needs to know about the nonsense that's going on here. So drop me a comment down there. And if you want to catch up on how Spanberger's attempt to shred the Second Second Amendment is going to end her political career? That is my guess, because she's going to have another big defeat when this gun grab goes to the Supreme Court. She's going down in flames on this one. You're going to want to watch the video right here that I'm linking. All right, friends, that is all I've got for you today. Until I see you again, be safe out there, okay?